Good evening, welcome to Central News for Monday the 4th of November. I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, Waikato District Health Board is currently running its annual Open for Better Care campaign, which aims to spread awareness of important patient safety messages. The messages are being promoted throughout the Waikato and Bay of Plenty, and topics change throughout the duration of the campaign. Vicky Parry says the campaign is crucial when it comes to seeing patient safety and hygiene improved in hospitals.
The focus of the campaign is improving patients' experience while in hospital and improving their outcomes by reducing harm to them, whether it's through falls or developing a hospital-acquired infection, safety issues, medication areas, those kind of things. Well, we can achieve that by asking our patients what matters to them, making sure that we learn and improve so we can reduce harm and improve the experience and outcome while here with us.
The month of November marks the start of Movember, in which men all around the country grow their facial hair in support of some of the biggest health threats facing modern men. The campaign provides a value opportunity for Movember organisers to raise awareness about men's health, whilst also getting men talking about their concerns and feelings. Sarah Fitzpatrick from the Waikato and Bay of Plenty division of the Cancer Society says the month gives Kiwi men a chance to open up.
Movember is the time of month, the month of November, which has been renamed as Movember, and it's when men throughout the country and throughout the world grow moustaches to change the face of men's health by promoting men's health issues like prostate cancer and mental illnesses and raising money to help support men with these things.
Australian fruit being shut out of Thailand over a regulatory issue has opened up an unexpected opportunity for New Zealand avocado growers this season. It is predicted the market in the Southeast Asian country will take somewhere between 20,000 to 30,000 trays. Southern Produce Director Carwyn Williams says Ava NZA is in a position to take advantage of the market opening in Thailand, thanks to the assistance of New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. Now for our region's weather, Hamilton, your Tuesday will be mostly cloudy with a freshening northeasterly. Your expected high is 19 and an overnight low of 11. Tuesday for you, Tauranga will be cloudy with a few drizzly patches and a strengthening northeasterly. Just ahead, what do possums like to eat? Welcome to Central News on TV Central. A recent study done by a University of Waikato doctoral student has revealed the food preferences of possums in the hope of offering better forms of possum control in our native New Zealand bush. Christy Cameron shared her research findings with Harriet Wilson.
So tell us what the aim of your research is.
Basically, the aim of my research was to find out what possums like to eat. It's quite a broad question, so we decided to use foods that are available in the wild. So things that they've reported to eat in the forest, so all types of leaves and insects, mushrooms, berries, birds and their eggs too. So we used a representative food from each of those groups to look at what would they eat in a captive situation.
And what can the information that you've gathered be used for?
So the thing is that possums are a major pest species in New Zealand. So we need to know about them. We need to know about their feeding behaviour. We need to know about their psychophysical abilities, such as what do they see, what can they see, what do they smell, how developed is their olfactory system, what do they eat in terms of their feeding behaviour in the wild. We need to know these things so we can properly eradicate them. My stuff in particular could be used to make effective lures, so how could we attract possums to the bait or the traps or whatever. That's kind of the main thing that you could aim my research at.
Can you tell us a little bit more specifically about how you actually tested these food preferences?
Well, we used a series of preference assessments. Firstly, we gave our possums each food separately, so by themselves, and then we gave it to them paired, so we gave them a choice between two of the foods. Then we moved on to something that required effort. So those first two experiments didn't require any effort by the possum. They just had to approach the food and eat it. The second lot of experiments, and there's about 7 of them, looked at behavioural economics and demand. So how much effort a possum will put into getting a preferred food. Now we offered our foods 2 at a time, so we had 6 foods, so it's a lot of conditions. But basically we asked a question of how much work you'll put into getting your preferred food. Just like humans, your preferred food, if it's by itself, you're going to eat it. But if there's an alternative, your preferences might change. We also added another level onto that by the 2 foods requiring different work amounts to get them. One lever, because we got them to press little levers, required 1 press, then 2 presses, then 4 presses, and it doubled each time. The other lever was constantly 30 responses. So of course we're looking at how much work they'll put into getting their preferred food and what happens when we change up the price. We did more experiments like this, varying the constant response requirement, and we went on to look at step size and all these different things. And we've also looked at different foods such as oats and a barley cocoa pop mix too. So that's not foods used in the wild, but are they foods that possums will respond for.
And was there anything really surprising or that stood out in what you found?
Well, possums really do like insects, fruit and egg. They do like that and across experiments, so they'll put much more effort into getting those foods, push the lever far more times, up to 512 times. Yep. There is also possums are very idiosyncratic in their preferences. There's no one food that every single possum will work the hardest for. Some possums prefer chicken, like raw chicken, more than anything, and then other possums won't touch it. They won't work for it at all. So yeah, really idiosyncratic.
How were possums actually introduced to New Zealand?
Possums actually came to New Zealand, the settlers brought them to establish a fur trade, which didn't actually go so well. That was in about 1850, around about. By the 1980s, there were 60 to 70 million possums in New Zealand, throughout the country. Since 2009, there are 30 million possums in New Zealand. This, of course, is an estimation.
And what is being done to control the possum problem currently?
Heaps of research, that's important. The most current research at the moment is looking at survivor possums, so in an area that's been subject to 1080 or some kind of bait program, killing program. They're looking at how many possums survived and where they are. They're also looking at effective lures and like pest technology, looking at pheromones as an effective lure.
And when will you finish your PhD research?
I'm hoping to finish in February next year. That's my aim. I'm working very hard towards it, and my partner is also helping me get there.
And do you have any plans after graduation or plans for the future?
My plans for the future, I want to continue research with my possums. I've got so many ideas going on for taste preference, looking at taste aversion, and also the mother and joey bond.
For more information on possums and the threat they pose in New Zealand, visit doc.gov.nz. Coming up next, home birth. Welcome back. A local mother of 3 has recently released a book about stories of home births in New Zealand. Harriet spoke to her about her book.
So do you believe that if a mother is more relaxed during giving labour, that it puts the baby more at ease as well?
When I think about the births of my own children, they were all born into the water at home, and I was the one that picked them up out of the water, or my mum did with my first, but the other 2 I picked them up out of the water, held my baby to my body, and we were skin on skin. And they were warm, and the lighting was dim. I had candle lights. There wasn't sort of loud sounds, bright lights, you know. It wasn't a harsh environment. It was a really beautiful, gentle environment. And they were all really relaxed when they were first born. You see on the TV the babies screaming, and my babies didn't scream when they were born. They were really, really relaxed. Their umbilical cords were left to keep pulsating, so they received all the oxygen and nutrients and blood that was in that cord that was theirs to have before the cord was clamped and cut. So they didn't have to suddenly start breathing, and they were getting those things through the cord for a while. And my babies could smell my scent and they could hear my voice that was familiar to them. It's the mother is the only thing that's familiar to them when they're first born. So when I compared that sort of an experience to maybe a baby that's been born by caesarean, which 1 in 4 babies in New Zealand are born by caesarean, they're pulled out of the mother's tummy, usually with forceps, and quite forcefully because it's a very small gap they're pulling the baby out of. And then the cord is clamped and cut straight away. The baby is sometimes sort of held up for the mother to see briefly before it's rushed over to the resuscitation table. It's rubbed down vigorously with a towel to try and sort of stimulate it to breathe. It's, often has its nose and mouth sort of suctioned, so tubes put down its throat and its nose to get all the mucus out. It's often given an injection of vitamin K at that point in the piece. And all this time, these precious first moments where a baby should be on its mother's chest, and the two of them, beginning that whole important bonding phase. The mother's sort of across the room, she can't see her baby, she can perhaps hear some distressing sounds from over there, and it's, the two experiences are kind of incomparable, really. And I think those first moments are really crucial, and it doesn't mean to say that mothers who have caesareans don't bond with their babies, but I think that women who give birth to their babies at home are just off to a great start in terms of that bonding process and establishing breastfeeding and all those sorts of things. So I do think it makes a difference for the babies and how easy they are when they're initially born.
It does sound like a much more traumatising experience than what you've described a home birth can be, definitely. Yeah. So with the home birth, are there any sort of risks associated, or like infection or anything like that?
Yeah. There are risks associated with birth, no matter where you choose to give birth, and they're something that you should, discuss with your midwife during the pregnancy, and, she should put those into perspective for you, because those risks are pretty minimal. If you're a healthy woman who's experienced a healthy pregnancy, then those risks are small, and, you need to discuss with her what would happen if some of those things were to happen, how would it be dealt with, that sort of thing. And it's interesting that you bring up the risk of infection, because the risk of infection is, of course, greater in the hospital environment than it is in the home environment, because in a hospital environment where it's a place where sick people go and bring their bugs, their foreign bugs. So when a woman enters the hospital environment, she is sometimes confronted with bugs and, that she is unfamiliar with. In her home environment, she's familiar with those bugs, and her body has produced antibodies, antibodies which will have gone through the placenta to the baby to help protect that baby from the familiar home environment sort of bugs, the bugs that you get in your home. So the risk of infection in hospital is actually greater than the risk of infection at home. And certainly for women who have had a surgical birth, where they've got a wound that's got to be healing, or they've had an episiotomy cut, that sort of thing. Those risks are definitely
That's really interesting. Now you have 5 chapters in your new book, and the second chapter is about healing birth.
Yes.
So can you tell us what that is?
Sure. Yeah. So that chapter, Healing Birth, is devoted to the stories of women who have had traumatic first birth experiences in hospital, and then have gone on to find what it takes to achieve the positive, gentle, empowering birth that they had desperately wanted in the first place. And the key ingredients, the key things that they found they needed to do were, first and foremost, to take responsibility for their birth experience, so becoming really informed and choosing a midwife whose philosophy fitted with their own, particularly a midwife who believes in birth as a normal, healthy life process that does not need interfering with, no interventions unless there's some medical reason to do so. Unless there's some good reason to do so, you leave birth alone. So choosing a good midwife, taking responsibility for their births and becoming informed and making sure that they're making informed decisions about all aspects of their care and having a midwife who supports them to do that. And finally, choosing to birth at home. So that was, for these women, it was found they felt they needed to be distanced from the hospital environment where they felt they were just a caesarean waiting to happen. And yeah, they described their home birth experiences as really empowering and gentle, but also as healing. So having that experience meant they felt they could heal a bit from that first traumatic experience.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you would like to find out more, you can visit the website birthright.co.nz. Just ahead, bringing communities together through liaising. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. With the new Hamilton City Council now voted in, Councillor Angela O'Leary is following through with her campaign promises and looking to roll out neighbourhood liaison groups around the city. Angela caught up with Harriet to share what these groups will achieve.
So what is the aim of these neighbourhood liaison groups?
So this is about connecting people to council, and particularly their elected members that represent their wards. Coming through my third election, it just highlights to me even more how few people out there are really have an understanding of what council does and what the elected members are involved in, and it's actually quite a lot. And I think there's a big core group of people out there that want to know and want to be involved and want to shape their city, but don't quite know how. So this idea is about breaking, I guess, the city down into smaller pieces, and then for elected members to go out, because we've got to go where the audience is, and start talking directly to people that are interested.
Now, you've actually already been chairperson of the Frankton Community Liaison Group. So what sort of things did you learn from that experience, or what sort of feedback did you receive?
So that was a very successful group, and I guess the biggest thing I learnt there was when you cut out, it wasn't a council committee as such, so there was no red tape involved. We were free to do the things and the projects and communicate with Frankton the way that we wanted to. So I guess that was the biggest lesson, that you don't necessarily have to bring a group of people into the council structure and the red tape involved to be successful out in the community. And feedback from things that we did in that group was great, and it continues today, even though the group was sort of disbanded a couple of years ago.
And why do you believe there is such a great need for better communication between the council and the community?
Well, of course, nothing highlights that than going through an election and getting, 39 or 38% turnout, which is tiny compared to the people that live in Hamilton City, which is about 144,000. So there is a need, and on the campaign trail, so many people would come up to me and say, who are the councillors? Who do we vote for? What do you do? We don't know anybody, we don't recognise anybody, and it happens at every election. So I think that there is a need for people to want to participate, and we've just got to go out there and we've got to go to those people. You can't expect them to come to us. And I think with doing things like that, we'll get a better interaction from people.
What sort of red tape do residents currently face when it comes to presenting their ideas or their concerns to the council?
It depends how they come into the process. If they come through a city councillor, if perhaps they've tried to say do something with the building department or a parking fine or something like that, that sort of fast tracks a process for them, because then we take on the issue and have it dealt with. Most of the time when people come to us, it's because of that bureaucracy and red tape, that they've tried to go through the proper channels and they've been unsuccessful. So it's fairly easy to get something done when you come to an elected member. There are a lot of things that we can help people with, and I guess we understand the processes of council a lot better, but that group highlighted, that initiative highlighted to me that you don't have to do things in a formal way to get action done, and I think that's got real value for the community.
What sort of format do you see these groups taking?
So I'm a big believer in what's not broken, let's not fix it, and the group, how it was formed last time, worked. I was the chair. We had I think 3 or 4 business people on there from the Frankton community, and we had some Frankton residents as well, and we had a couple of staff members on there as well. And look, it worked really great. When we made decisions, it was just by consensus. We took minutes, but it wasn't anything formal. We didn't have to move and second things. It was just a group of passionate people all wanting the same end game, which is really important. So I'm not proposing to change anything. I would like to see that same structure implemented for this new idea.
And so you just mentioned sort of briefly the kinds of people that would be involved with these groups. So who would be the ideal sort of person to come on board with these groups?
So I think we all shop in our local neighbourhood suburban shops, and we all go to the dairy and the grocery store and things like that. So I would like to see if we take, say Dinsdale as an example, perhaps there'd be 3 or 4 of those, if sort of a suburban shopping centre like that, there'd be 3 or 4 of those people, because, I know the name of my local dairy, the business, the dairy there, and a couple of people at the supermarket. So they need to be key people in there, as well as a couple of residents who are quite well networked in the area. Maybe there's a sports club or a football club there, a social agency. Those kinds of people that are quite connected in their neighbourhood are the ideal people for this program.
So what sort of costs are involved with running these groups?
It's time. Time is the biggest cost. There's not really anything that's going to cost the ratepayer at all.
And what are your plans going forward from here and seeing these groups implemented into the community?
So I've had a chat with the Mayor, and she's quite interested in the idea. She is organising the council committee structure and things like that at the moment, so I'll wait to see what comes out of that, and that should be in the next week or so, and then see where this idea can be implemented through that structure.
So how can people find out more or perhaps get involved with these groups?
Just jump on the council website, find my email address or my phone number and give me a call. I'd love to hear from people that would be interested.
You can visit Angela's website, angelao'leary.co.nz, to find out more about her plans for Hamilton. That brings us to the end of tonight's news for the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty. We would love to hear what you thought about any of the stories on tonight's show. So email us or like us on Facebook. Let us know if you have any news of your own too. I'm Hilary Entwistle, and I will be back tomorrow night. Have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.